Hey, I have a question for you. Have you ever seen this passage before? Matthew 24:36, it says, "But concerning the day of the hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, nor anybody except the Father alone." I bring up this passage because a viewer of mine here on YouTube asked me the question. They said, what do you think about this passage? What are your opinions on this passage? So today we're going to be talking about Matthew chapter 24 and what this phrase means, in my opinion. Well, hello and welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, it's nice to see you also. This is a Bible study channel. What we do here is study the Bible because we take the Bible seriously and we seriously study the Bible. When you click into the channel, you can find all kinds of videos on lots of different topics, and you can just have a ball watching all kinds of really cool videos. My name's Adam Jordan Clark. I publish a brand new video every single day. And I try to make these videos in real time. And what I mean by real time is I record them the day of and then I just publish them. So if you ever want to know something, just comment below and let me know when I make a video. Just like this video, actually. I'm making this video because somebody in the comments said, "Hey, dude, what do you think about this passage?" And I said, "Wow, that's a good question. Maybe I'll do a video on it." And so here I am doing a video on it. So it's pretty cool. And also I want to tell you that it's 4th of July today. So for us Americans here in America, it's apparently America's birthday. It's called Independence Day. This is when America became a nation or something like that. I don't know. Politics right now are very weird in America, so there's all kinds of opinions on that stuff, so it gets a little weird. Anyways, the point is that it is 4th of July, and if you watch this before the 4th of July happens, because right now in my time, Texas time, Central Time, it's 3:15 p.m. right now. My goal is to have this video up in 45 minutes, which is not probably going to happen. So just so you know, like that's how real time this actually is. It's literally 3:15 p.m. I have to have it up by 4 p.m. because I publish every day at 4 p.m., but this is probably not going to make it by 4. If it does, honestly, you should comment below and be like, wow, good job. But anyways, the point is that if you are watching this today at 4 o'clock, if it gets published then, let me just tell you, dude, like I told you guys this a couple of days ago, it is the 4th of July. You know, pretty much all the fireworks are canceled here in Texas, at least, or at least San Antonio. I don't know about other places, but I'm sure that they are. The point of the matter is this, is like if you're going to go out and, you know, do some physical distancing, wear a mask, you know, be a smart person, be a good human being. Don't do anything dumb. Most importantly, don't drink and drive. That's like really, really bad. You can call an Uber, you can get a friend to come pick you up, whatever it is. Just don't do anything stupid like that. So anyways, now that we got all that stuff out of the way, we're going to talk about this passage. And I actually think this is a very interesting passage because topics like these, we can talk about this stuff all day long. And that's like so incredible. So that's why one of the reasons why I actually decided, hey, I'm going to make this video today because it's a really great conversation. So when we come back to Matthew chapter 24, we do see this in verse 36. It says, "But concerning the day or the hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son." And believe it or not, this phrase here, "nor the Son," is actually a textual variant. And some scholars say it should not be there. Some people say it should be there. In other words, some people are saying some scribes added this. Other scholars say that scribes did not add it. I don't really know. I don't really care. I don't think it matters, particularly for this point, but it is something to think about. The only thing that really matters here is that only God knows. And I think this is a consistent teaching. When we scroll up through Matthew chapter 24, we do have some stuff about the times and seasons and all that stuff. Nobody knows the times or the seasons, you know. We see that phrase a lot. Paul uses the phrase in some of his writings. And so it's just very eye-opening here, and it tells us a lot about early Christianity. We'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. But the passage that I really want to focus on the most is right here, and I just want to talk about it for a couple seconds. It's actually, which question is it? Okay, it says, "And as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately and says, 'Tell us, when will these things happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?'" So I want to talk about this question really quickly. This is pretty much where the controversy starts, at least in my opinion. Remember, this video is pretty much just straight opinion. What do you think? Okay, so here are my thoughts on the issue. That question right there, particularly in Matthew chapter 24, is really where the controversy starts. If you actually read Harold Eberle and Martin Trench's the Victorious Eschatology, the second edition, actually, because that's the one that I've read. I haven't read the first edition. I read the second edition, which is the updated and revised version, basically. When you read that, they talk a lot about this question. They actually split it out. Now, the reason why I mention that is because of this. Number one, I'm not a preterist. Number two, I'm not a partial preterist. I'm just not. I guess you could throw me in the category of futurism, but it's not really my own belief. Basically, when it comes to futurism, the way I view that term is to simply say when you actually read the Bible honestly and exegetically, when you really exposit the scripture, you have no choice but to say the Bible is teaching futurism. So am I actually a futurist? I'm not really sure if I'm an actual futurist, but I do know that the New Testament teaches futurism. So there's a little bit of a difference. So basically, because the New Testament's teaching futurism, I side with futurism. I'm not actually really a futurist. I'm a neither-orist. I'm actually an I don't knowist. It's a new term I'm making up. It's when we just say I don't know, because I don't know. But I do know that preterism is a bunch of hogwash. And when you read Victorious Eschatology, they split these questions out, and they kind of structure these arguments based on these questions. And what they try to do is answer the text based on these questions. Now, there might be some merit there in doing that, actually doing that process in Matthew 24 from some type of an exegetical perspective. There may be some value to that. However, it's a lot more complicated than what you would suspect. I've mentioned this a couple times about Matthew chapter 24. And I'll just say it outright. I think that Matthew, the author of this gospel, was himself confused. I also think that he probably read Paul's writings. So he had this tradition of the early church and the first Christians, really, because this writer is most definitely a second or third generation Christian. He's writing after 70 AD. He's also writing with the knowledge of the destruction of Jerusalem. And so when you start factoring all these things in and you read Matthew 24, you're like, okay, it really starts to make sense. This guy's probably confused about some eschatology he himself doesn't actually know, and that's why he's adding these things on. When you read Mark 13, that question there, it says, what is going to be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Mark 13 is written before Matthew, and Matthew is copying from Mark, and Mark never talks about Jesus' second coming. It's only Matthew. So that tells you that Matthew's adding stuff into Mark's writing, probably because he disagrees, or maybe because he's confused. And I know that's a hard point to understand here in Christianity, because a lot of people get upset when you start talking about that kind of stuff, but whatever, you need to know about it whether you like it or not. And so the point is that Matthew is probably confused, and he's probably not really sure. Maybe himself, he probably is trying to work out some of his own eschatology as he's writing, because he doesn't know. So given the fact that Matthew doesn't know and you don't know, tells you pretty up front, you probably shouldn't be relying on Matthew 24 as much as you probably are to find eschatology. So what am I actually saying here? I'm saying flat out that Matthew 24 is not as reliable as people would like it to be in terms of building an eschatology. What I mean by that is this. When people talk about the end times, they go right to Matthew chapter 24, and then they build all this stuff on top of it. And what I'm telling you is that that's a bad idea. This should be a passage that you should avoid altogether, because it's just not as good as some of the other writings that we have. Paul, for example, has way better eschatology than what we see here in Matthew 24. In terms of quality, Paul's way more descriptive in his eschatology than what Matthew is in Matthew 24. And people say, I don't understand that. Well, you don't understand that because when you read it in face value, you see all this stuff happening, and Paul is not as explicit. But even though he's not as explicit, he's way more deeper. He has a lot more depth in his writing. So anyways, to come back to the point here, the question of Jesus' second coming, this is where a lot of people build the entire argument for their eschatology. They take this one question, they build all this stuff upon it, and then they go, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is where things get a little confusing, because the question says, what is going to be the sign of your coming, right? Well, again, I mentioned that Matthew is the one who changed it. The disciples probably never asked that question. They just said, when are these things going to happen? They never asked about his second coming, because Jesus probably didn't have a second coming at that time, or at least the disciples probably didn't know about it. That's a little speculation on my part, but again, you're asking for my opinion. Here's what I think, right? So I don't think that this is a legitimate question. I think that this is Matthew's question, not the disciples' question. Little tricky thing to understand there. If you want to get a deeper explanation about what I mean, just let me know in the comments below if that doesn't really make sense to you. So anyways, Matthew does say here, he says, but no one knows when Jesus is coming back. Paul also says the same thing. Now concerning the day or the hour and the times and the season, no one knows. Jesus is going to come like a thief in the night. It's going to come like a thief in the night, right? What does that mean? Well, guys, it's really simple. It means no one knows, right? And so what I'm trying to explain here is this. When people come to Matthew 24, they read about these signs, and then they take these signs and then they try to apply them to real life where we're living now, and they say, look, we can predict the end of the world. That's your Left Behind garbage. That's your other people garbage. That's your John Hagee garbage. That's your people out there with the blood moons and the people who are saying, no, it's the religion of Islam and the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim. It's all of these quacks. Okay, I'm sorry to just speak frank about it, but I'm being honest. They're quacks. These people have no idea what they're talking about. They're all wrong. Every single one of them. They're all wrong. They have no idea what they're talking about. Stop listening to them. They're just absolutely clueless. They're making stuff up. 100% making stuff up. It's pure fiction. That's my advice. Stop listening to them. They don't know what they're talking about. So these signs are not actually talking about Jesus' coming in terms of we can predict his coming. We're not supposed to know about his coming. When Jesus comes back in the clouds, he's just going to come back in the clouds. There's nothing going to be leading up to it. There's no signs. There's no catastrophe. There's none of that stuff. Because a lot of the stuff that Matthew's talking about in Matthew 24 is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem that already occurred, right? So he's predicting the destruction of Jerusalem. That's a pretty well-known fact. All scholars pretty much agree with that at some level. At some level, we'll be honest there, at some level. But in terms of Jesus' actual second coming, they're two entirely different events. They're not the same thing. It just so happens that they're being talked about in the same piece of text, what makes it a little bit confusing, but they're two entirely different events. And when Jesus comes back, no one knows. That's why it says he'll come back like a thief in the night. But people who are believers, we're not going to be afraid. We're not going to be shocked when he comes back because we know that he's coming back. And also, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're being Christians. We're being good people. We're being the light of the world. So when he comes back, we're not going to be surprised, but everybody else is. Pretty amazing. And so the way that I envision Jesus' second coming is I don't envision an antichrist or the end of the world or any of this crazy stuff that people are talking about. I just envision it as any ordinary day, just like today. It's normal. It's 4th of July. Everybody's going out and lighting off fireworks and having a good time. And all of a sudden, bam, Jesus just shows up in the clouds, just like that. That's how I envision it. I think that's probably one of the best ways to envision it. I don't think the end of the world is going to happen. And I promise you this, when you really start to build your eschatology upon that thought of thinking, wow, Jesus is just going to come back whenever he comes back, it really changes your perspective. And all the other stuff, well, it's just all the other stuff. Doesn't matter. Right? So it really simplifies things and it makes things a lot easier. Listen, if you like this video, let me know in the comments below. If you did not like the video, please tell me why. Also, just to remind you, this is my opinion. I hardly ever do opinion pieces on this YouTube channel, but somebody asked me and they said, what's your opinion? And I said, well, I'll just make a video. And this is literally my opinion. You can disagree as much as you want. I personally don't care. I'm just saying this is what I think. Here are my thoughts just out in the open. I could be right. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm just saying here's what it is. I have some more playlists up here if you want to go and check them out. Don't forget to click the big red A because when you do, you subscribe to the channel and you get a brand new video just like this every single day. My name's Adam Jordan Clark. Thanks for watching. As always, I will see you in the next video.